What's up, everyone? Welcome to the QBIQ podcast. Thank you to all of those football coaches, parents, players, and fans that listen to us and support us here at the QBIQ podcast. We really appreciate it. Again, this is Chet Walters here today with a great episode and a special QB Dad series with the father of Evan Conley. Now, Evan Conley is Louisville's freshman phenom quarterback and a long-time QBIQ guy. Now, Evan had a killer and very busy Week 7 in college football. First and foremost, let's list out some of the things that he did. Across all of college football, he was second in total QBR at 99.2, and that was just behind Malcolm Perry of Navy, who was 99.4. Evan was also ACC Quarterback of the Week, also ACC Freshman of the Week, and he made the top 8 on the Davy O'Brien Award list for Week 7. Evan had a busy week, so really excited that we got the chance to sit down with Ron Conley, his dad, for a few minutes and chat about their journey from Kell High School in Marietta, Georgia, to committing to Appalachian State and the staff moving to Louisville and that whole transition and process and QBIQ and of course the amazing week that Evan and Louisville just had, beating top 20 Wake Forest 62-59. Big game coming up for them this weekend versus Clemson. Really excited to bring you this episode with Ron. Great perspective as a dad that has invested everything into his son, and really cool to hear him as a fan now as well, watching Evan play. So without further ado, here we go with this special episode of the QB Dad series. But again, always remember, follow us on all of our social channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and go to QBIQsystem.com for the full system and all the other products that we have available. Really, really cool stuff. It's going to benefit you a lot. A lot of the guys right now in season are doing game grades, and it is awesome to see the improvement. So appreciate you guys. Thank you for the support. Check out this episode with Ron Conley. Ron, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Chad. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for jumping on the QBIQ podcast with us today, and very appropriately to have you on this week, because if you watch college football, Evan Conley is probably a household name now on ESPN. He just had a killer week, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He had a good week.
Yeah, he had a good week for sure. I mean, we covered it in the intro. I mean, ACC Quarterback of the Week, ACC Freshman of the Week, Davy O'Brien Award, Great 8 list, second in total QBR for Week 7. He was busy. He was a busy guy this Saturday, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, and he put everything he's ever learned into effect on those 62 points that had to be scored to beat Wake Forest.
Right. There was not a shortage of points that night for sure. So, I mean, you kind of jumped right into it. All the things that he's learned throughout this whole journey, all the hard work that he's put in, he's had to use it all, you say. What's that been like for you as a dad to see him work through the whole process from young to middle school to high school to now at Louisville?
Well, the one thing that kind of stands out is that he's always wanted to excel at sports, and then especially football. He was a lacrosse player too, and he could have done a lot with lacrosse, but he loves football, and he just became a guy that loved training and started training, and just needed more, and that I could ever bring to him, or even the coaches that were around him could bring to him, and he would, and that's why we started with Chris, and it was just a great fit for him, because Evan, he wants to work hard, he wants to know exactly why things are happening on the field and wants to understand it. so he knows how to improve. And that was what Chris offered, and definitely was a great find for us to get with Chris.
Yeah, and that was you guys have been training with Chris for quite a few years, right?
Yeah, Evan was in sixth grade, just ending
Okay.
sixth grade when he started him. Yes, and
Awesome. So it's definitely been a while. You guys have shared quite a few training sessions, but a lot of time together. What was from sixth grade to now? What exactly like did you like most about the training and the QBIQ process for Evan?
well, I think the one thing that stands out most of all is that Chris, as a coach in that whole system, I think at that time, Chris was the mainstay of that, and it was a great opportunity for Evan to get trained by someone who really knew what they were doing and understand it. And I remember we were at a small little training session there, and Evan was there with a few other guys, and I think those guys had to go home, and then Evan was staying there working, and Chris and Evan were working on trying to accomplish this one goal, and this was very early on, and they tried and tried, and Evan was not getting it. It wasn't making it happen. Wasn't making it happen, and then finally. They were getting ready to move on, and Chris just stopped and says, "No, we're going to have an exorcism. This will get fixed." And he fixed it, and it was 2 hours later, that when it actually happened. So we were there quite late that night, but it was just the dedication I could see in Chris and what he did for the program. And then you start topping it off on not just the physical aspects, but the mental aspects of understanding what you're seeing there in the game. And that's what I think, really where Evan started to take off, not only athletically, but being mental, especially even now as I see in college. The thing is, it's a mental game now. You gotta. Everyone's working hard. Everyone's putting in the time physically, but you're gonna have to be smarter than the guys across the line of scrimmage from you and understand what they're doing so you can accomplish your goals on offense. And that's what I think Chris really instilled in Evan as a player, and just you know having Evan to compete at that
Right.
level.
Well,
So
and you say that one individual training session that you mentioned, the fact that it was 2 hours later to really fix a certain thing, that kind of describes Evan perfectly, right? I mean, the fact that you go through a training session and then you spend another 2 hours, whether he necessarily deep down really wanted to do that or not, but that kind of describes him perfectly that he'll do the extra work. He'll spend the extra 2 hours to make sure something gets done.
yeah, that's for sure. I mean, he's a hard worker. What I didn't know, and if we changed high schools, we moved and went to a different high school, and when he finished out his junior and senior in high school, and there I ran into one of the um, players' dads, and his son was a very good player there at Kell High School, and he told me, he goes, "I'll tell you one thing I'll never forget about Evan," and he said that I was dragging my son and a couple other players over to the high school where we were going at when Evan was young, may have only been seventh or eighth grade then, and he said they could barely get him there, and he wanted to train. And he said, and Evan just come flying up on his bicycle. Of course, he wasn't able to drive. Flies up, rides right up to the field, throws his bicycle down, and jumps off and runs a 400-yard dash as hard as he could. And he said, "That's what we got to do, boys, if we're going to make that happen." Luckily, Evan ended up playing with those same guys later on. They're great football players. But that's just, I mean, I never knew anything about it. I knew he went and worked out. He said, "I watched him run and work out. He did it all by himself. There was no one there." And that's just, it doesn't matter to him if you're there or not, because I think the competition is with himself, not with
Yeah,
anybody else.
right. And that's the best competition to have. And when you're aware of that and you can recognize that, and once you start to defeat any any naysaying that goes on within, it doesn't matter really what happens elsewhere. So that's awesome that it started at such a young age for him. And that's great that you brought up Kell High School, right? Marietta, Georgia. Had a great experience there. Talk a little bit about Coach Brett Sloan and Kell High School and what that experience was like for you guys as a family there.
Well, one thing is that we actually played our youth in the Kell youth football in the Kell operation there. So we knew people there. So when we ended up going back there, it was something that we already knew people there. And Brett Sloan was just coming on as a coach. And Evan and Brett got together and they met and went over a couple things and talked. And Evan says, "Oh, this guy's the perfect coach for me because he understands football." And that's because Evan had been dealing with Chris Hickson for so long that, if you didn't understand what was happening in the secondary, if you didn't know if they got this kind of coverage, and if you don't know what kind of pass patterns you're supposed to be running, Evan wasn't going to want to deal with you, I think. I mean, he would because he's a obedient player, right? But he wants more. He wants that guy that's going to challenge him mentally, and physically. And Brett Sloan did that for him and was able to, coach him and move him on to a higher level. And Brett Sloan is a, really good guy. And the people there at Kell welcomed us. And it was like we had never even left that area. So nice and just encouraging. And everyone, was very happy that we were there. I mean, I know we even, he took the job from one of the kids, that was there, that was going to be the next quarterback. But then that's just, and even their parents, ended up being a great relationship with that because sometimes it's a tough situation for
Sure.
but that kid was a great kid and a great player and he contributed somewhere else on the team. And it was really a great experience for Evan.
That's great. So at Kell, and you have the whole recruiting process, and Evan was obviously received a ton of different offers from countless number of schools, and he kind of landed on App State. And App State came up because Coach Satterfield was there and his staff was there, and it felt good and it felt right. And then something happened, and his staff moved over to Louisville. What was that like as a parent in that situation of really trying to not control your son's decision, but trying to be there and give support when there's a couple major options there? And then when that curveball comes in, when the staff moves to Louisville, what was the mindset and the daily, kind of the daily attitude for you throughout all that?
Well, it was kind of really interesting. I mean, App State, of all the colleges that uh, showed an interest in Evan, he really wanted to go play at Appalachian State. He really wanted to play there. And as you go around and you see all these different uh, coaches, you find out that it's quite an interesting concept, this recruiting, Um, and if you bought a used car, you might have experienced some of that same type of effort. And it's very interesting. And, this is my first son going through this. And then that's for me understanding it a little better now, hindsight wise. The one thing that stuck out for Appalachian State was the coaching staff. When they introduced themselves, of course, Satterfield, he had played there. Then he was there and, been there 8 years. Then the other coaches stood up. Oh, I've been here 20 years. This coach had been here long years. As they introduced other staffs at other colleges, this guy's been here 1 year, that guy 2 years. They hadn't been together a long time. These guys been together for a long time and hung out together. Their whole process. It was quite interesting. And I said, wow. So then we got up there and our official visit, we are watching the Sun Belt championship game that was at Appalachian State, and they win it. We go out to dinner with the recruiting his recruiting coach, which is the defensive coordinator, Brian Brown, and the offensive coordinator, Frank Ponce. And we go out to dinner with these guys and have a nice dinner. We talk, everything's lovely. And then, we leave. And then the next day, we hear that Satterfield is going to Louisville. And we hear nothing at all from anyone at App State. It's just like that was the Last Supper event. All of a sudden
Oh
everybody's
man.
scattered. It's quiet, and we're like, wow, what are we going to do now? And then who's going to be the coach at App State? What will all happen there? And it was quite. I was concerned. I think Evan was, rightly so concerned about what was going to happen next and where would you end up. And then, believe it or not, other coaches were calling right away, right? Because some of the ones that he had offers from called him up, and was saying, hey, look, if you don't have to go to App State now, you can come here. And so
Sure.
that was,
At that point, it becomes the Wild West almost.
yeah. And then all of a sudden, then we got a call that, hey, come to Louisville. And then that was at just the same time that App State had settled on their head coach. So they had he had actually called us right before our trip to Louisville, and we discussed things. And we said, hey, we're going to go up there and see. And he didn't really know Evan very well, right? He didn't pick Evan. He didn't know Evan. And
Sure.
then we got up to Louisville, and it's a great facility. It's a great place. The city didn't know much about the school at all. We're going on an official visit with a few other guys, and the coaches get on the bus and they say, we're going to go with you too because we haven't seen it either. So they're riding a tour with us because they haven't seen the school either. And it was that kind of event, right? And then we go to dinner, and they bring a couple of the other players in, and then Evan goes and hangs out with a couple of the players, and they're going, hey, tell us about this coach. We don't know anything. Evan knows more about Coach Satterfield than any
Oh
other
wow.
player
Yeah.
there
Sure
at
enough.
that time. Right. So they're all trying to get information from him at that time. Well, it turns out, Satterfield, when we talk to him, he ends up bringing that whole Appalachian State coaching staff all the way to Louisville. And then so all these guys that have had time to be together and that, they know each other, they've coached with each other. The only guy that was, of a major importance was Ledford, who was the OC now. He was the NC State's line coach. He came, but he had worked at Appalachian State for many years before, just the 2 years he had gone to NC State. So they all knew each other and hung out together. So
Yeah.
the one thing is that, hey, want an opportunity to compete? Can we compete? Will that be? Will we have? Will we have an opportunity, or Evan have an opportunity to compete for playing time here? And just understanding what that staff is. And they said, yeah, we're gonna compete. And I just told Evan, I said, it's your decision, but even if you don't play it down, these would be great men to be around. Great
Yeah.
men to be around for 4 years, right?
Right.
So, uh,
Well,
because you don't,
that's huge. That's
and
huge
just
that
so
they
you,
stuck with him and that he stuck with them. That says a lot.
Chris Hickson's phone was blowing up during that time when we were in Louisville as we're talking to him, trying to understand what's going on too.
Oh, I'm
So, I mean,
sure.
Chris,
And vice versa. I'm
so,
sure he was blowing you guys up too.
yeah, it was good. It
That's
was good. It was good to have him as a resource. Believe me.
good. Good. Well, that was awesome. That's you hear all the stories of the recruiting process. You guys obviously had an interesting one, and so far it seems like it's been very beneficial. Um, Ron, were you at the game? Were you at the Wake Forest game?
Oh yes,
So
yes.
what was that like for you, sitting up in the stands and watching Evan go 12 for 18, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, 79 rushing yards, and the game sealing rushing touchdown?
Well, it was exciting. You know, when you go to the opponent's stadium, you know, as parents, you know, you do get some tickets to go, but you don't always get the best seats, right? So you're kind of, we're stuffed. I was like in the very seat at the far edge with a big wall right beside me. And the best thing it was, you know, as you sit there for years and years, I've seen him play, but you do get excited as a parent, and you get fired up. We're sitting with other players, parents, and it's a great environment to be in. And you just and everybody's getting to be friends and know each other, and of course cheer for the team and each other's kids. So that makes it nice. And it was as I was watching him play, I almost, you know, I hate to say it, I was flashing back to a little bit of of Kell High School, right? So I felt back. I said, "My goodness, he's really getting comfortable here," because you know
Right.
it was starting to feel like, oh, you know, now everything happens like, you know, 10 times as fast, you know, as high
Right.
school does. But it was,
Well,
we were
and
sitting
especially
there.
when you're playing a top 20 team in the country.
Right, right. And I was and you know, I know he can sling it. I know he can throw it. I know he can. It's just, can he read? Can he understand the quickness of this game? And I knew he could run. You know, I've seen him run. I knew he was fast, and they kept calling him the pro style quarterback, and I don't know why, because he likes to throw it first before running, and but he can run. I always
Yeah.
mean, I mean, he rushed for over 900 yards as a sophomore in high school, you know,
Right.
as a quarterback. So
And
it was
and it was
it was
so cool. I don't know if you saw it, Ron. He had a post game interview with somebody. I came across it on YouTube, but somebody asked him about that run, that touchdown run against Wake, and somebody said, "Well, how did you feel? Did you feel fast?" And Evan made sure to tell that reporter that he runs a 4.640 and that he felt plenty fast on that last run. He had to make sure that that reporter knew it. So everybody knows now that he can run.
right, right. Yeah, I guess one of the other coaches, one of the coaches there, the quarterback coach, was dogging him out because he was calling him the 5-0 kid, right? The 5-0
Mm,
kid, the 5-0 kid. So, and I think that's, you know, that's not going to sit well with him. Believe me, I know he's going to prove you wrong. I
right.
mean, he's just a competitor. He's a competitor. Gosh, you walk towards the door with him, he's going to beat you through it. So, uh, yeah. And I was sitting. I tell you, the greatest thing is I was sitting in the end zone when he threw that nice slant and go to Des Fitzpatrick. That thing that landed in there, that 50-yard touchdown pass. We were right there. That was the best thing. I could see that, and that when he took off running, I was like, "Oh boy, this is good," because he wasn't going to get caught. So
Yeah.
it
Well,
was
that's
it was
awesome.
it was
Well, yeah, I mean, such a big week for him personally, but a huge week for Louisville as a team and program. And it just looks and sounds and feels like they're doing some great things there. Big test this coming weekend against Clemson. I'm sure you guys will be there. Um, Best of luck. Give Evan the best of luck from the guys at QBIQ and Chris and me, and can't wait to watch what happens this weekend. And Ron, really appreciate you jumping on for a few minutes on the QBIQ podcast with us and talking about your son and his journey and all the cool things that are happening in his life right now.
no problem, Chet. Appreciate it. Appreciate you guys and all you guys do. And for any quarterbacks that are coming through, I would definitely go see the QBIQ system there.
Awesome. Thanks, Ron. Take care.
All right. See ya.